Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, A Curious Cuttlefish. I'm Sarah and today I'm going to be talking about knitting for crocheters. Hello everyone, so nice for you to join me again. If you are new to my channel and you would like to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram as A Curious Cuttlefish, or you can email me at acuriouscuttlefish@gmail.com. I also have an Etsy shop, which you can find in the description box beneath. So, today's video, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit more about knitting for crocheters. And so I'm going to be going over the needles I use, how I do my basic cast on, how to do a knit and purl stitch, and my recommendations for you guys, how I hold my yarn in my hands, and how I've seen other people hold their yarn. So hopefully from this video you guys can figure out what works best for you. I do encourage you, if you are a crocheter, to learn to knit because it is very fun. It's very enjoyable. But you do have to keep in mind that knitting does take a lot more time than it takes for you to crochet something. Granted, the fabric does look very different, and so you can create some very beautiful items when you knit. It just will take you a lot longer to make them. So with that, for this video, I will be using my Chigu needles. So when I'm showing you guys, all of my needles are going to be on, all my knitting is going to be on circular needles. Like I said in my previous video, I do not use straight needles. Even when I'm knitting flat, I only use circulars. So if you are thinking about embarking on a knitting learning experience, I recommend that you get circular needles. If you find that you like knitting, I recommend just invest in a interchangeable needle set, and you will see why. Unlike crocheting, where you can use one hook for multiple projects, with knitting you need different lengths of cables depending on the size of the project you are making. And if you just get circular needles, one size needle with one particular size cable, if you get a thicker or thinner yarn, you need to change the needle size. If you want a larger or smaller project, you have to change the cable size. And if you purchase each of those items individually per project, it does get quite pricey, and it will end up costing more than you would pay for an interchangeable set. Yes, these sets are expensive. This one ran me about $100, but I don't have to buy any more needles or cables now, and I can do everything from my set, except if I wanted to do an extra large project, I would probably just need to buy an extra large cable, so I can include that with this set and use it with the needles that are already included in here. I will have links in the description box beneath for the circular needles that I started off on, and I do recommend those if you want to try out knitting. I'll have links to those in the description box beneath. I am not affiliated with Amazon or those links in any way. Those are just my personal recommendations from what I have learned on, and just that they grip the yarn better when you are learning, so it's harder for you to drop stitches. Those are my recommendations. So with that, okay, so before I turn this camera around to show you guys my hands and how I hold my yarn, if you are a crocheter, you are already very familiar with picking your hook size based off of the yarn type that you are using. Knitting is the same, and this is probably one of the main reasons why I go with millimeters instead of the US terms for my crochet hooks. If you are knitting with a yarn and you would typically use a 5mm crochet hook, if you're crocheting with a yarn and you would typically use a 5mm crochet hook, then to knit you go 1mm size down. So if you wanted to knit with it, you would use a 4mm instead of a 5mm. And that's the general rule of thumb. If you're knitting, you go 1mm down from the hook size that you would use for that yarn, and you would use that knitting needle to knit. So that is why I just go by millimeters. It is so much easier for me to think in those terms. That was, if I am going to be crocheting, I know what size hook I would use. If I'm going to be knitting, I know what size needle I would use. And with that, I am going to turn this camera around and show you guys my hands, how I hold my needles, how I hold my yarn in my hands, and how I do my basic cast on, your basic knit stitch, and your basic purl stitch. So let me turn this camera around and we shall continue. Okay everyone, so I have my camera set up and I'm going to show you. So these are my interchangeable needles, and they just have this little thread here on the end that I just simply attach to here. So let me just get this screwed on. There's a little tool off screen that I use to tighten this. So I'm going to tighten it, and then I'm going to show you how I hold my needles and my yarn. Okay, so now I have my needles ready. I am going to be showing you guys my long tail cast on. So for that, I put my slip knot right here. And this slip knot, you should know how to do this if you know how to crochet. I left a extra long tail, hence the name a long tail cast on. So let me slip this slip knot right onto my needles. Okay, and so how I hold this, I am going to grab this in my top 2 fingers, and then I am going to grab the other one with my thumb and bottom 2 fingers. So you should have something that looks like this. The top 2 fingers are holding the tail. The bottom 2 are holding the yarn that is connected to your skein or your cake. Okay everyone, I actually turned this camera back around because I have realized that showing you this long tail cast on might actually be easier if I am holding it up here. My hands were really blocking the way when I had my camera. So again, you want to have your tail in your top 2 fingers and the side attached to your yarn around your thumb. And what you're going to do is you're going to twist it so that the yarn around your thumb gets a little loop in it. You want to insert your needle inside of that loop, and then you want to grab onto the tail. Grab onto the tail, so now there's a yarn over on your needle from the tail that you can pull through the loop on your thumb. And then you're going to pull everything tight, and you should now have 2 stitches on your needle. So let me show that to you guys again. You want to make sure that there is a loop on your thumb. Take your knitting needle, insert it inside of that loop. In essence, yarn over with the tail. You want to pull this loop that you just did the yarn over through the loop on your thumb, release the loop from your thumb, and tighten everything. There's 3 stitches. I'm going to keep doing it till I have 10, and then I'll turn the camera back around. So, cross over your thumb, insert your needle into that cross that you made by I turn my hand, right? You're going to turn your hand, insert the needle into that loop, yarn over, pull it through, drop the loop, there's another stitch. Insert, yarn over, pull through. So now we have 5 stitches. You are going to continue this, and as you learn this motion, it gets easier and you'll be able to cast on faster. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so now you should have 10 stitches on your needle. I am going to turn this camera back around and show you guys how you do your knit and purl stitches. Also, how I hold the yarn in my left hand.
Okay, so I finished my long tail cast on. There are 10 stitches on my needle, and you would just continue this long tail cast on for however many stitches you would like. If you're doing a dishcloth, you could do, say, 50 stitches to the width that you want. So there it is on there. And now, how I hold the yarn in my left hand. I like to take my yarn and I wrap it around my pointer finger twice. Okay, and so now that this has the cast on, I'm going to move this needle over to my left hand. And so I hold my yarn like this. The yarn is around my pointer finger. I have it wrapped around twice, and this keeps the tension that I use when I knit. When you're using the long tail cast on, make sure that you're wrapping the proper yarn around your pointer finger and not working from the tail. I have done this, and then I have to rip it all out and start over. Okay, so here is, I'm going to do a basic knit stitch all the way across. And for this knit stitch, you want to insert your needle underneath and up into that first loop, into here and up and behind. So now your needles should look like this. I then wrap the yarn around. I just move my finger a bit so I could get the yarn wrapped around there. You want to pull this loop through, and that is your first knit stitch. So to complete it, we're going to pull off the loop that was on there. There's one knit stitch, so let's continue. We're going to insert our needle into this next stitch. You want to be sure it is going in there and only going behind just one strand of the yarn, that you're not completely missing the inside of this stitch. So now if you see, I use my finger to pull this yarn over and then pull through. There's another knit stitch. We'll pull that off and we shall continue. Insert my needle into the next stitch, pull my yarn over, and I know that most people will go this way. I am odd, and I like to go clockwise. Most people do counterclockwise. I do clockwise. So I wrap clockwise, and let's pull that through. And I'm just going to continue this for the next 6 stitches now. So insert, yarn over, and pull through. And I'm realizing now that you can't really see my finger back here. Try to do it up where you can see it. Yarn over, through, and I feel like if you crochet, this motion is easier, and if you've never had any experience with the fiber arts. And I do find it so much easier to hold the yarn in your left hand. I know a lot of knitters will hold it in their right. Holding in your left is called continental style. If you hold it in, holding in your right is English style. Holding it in your left hand is continental style, and I prefer the continental style. Alright, so there's our knit stitch going all the way across. Then how you continue for the next row, you're going to transfer this needle over to your left hand, if you are right-handed. Turn this needle over, and this row I'm going to do all purl stitches. Okay, so how you can see in the row previous, when you're starting, this was a knit stitch because it has this little band here. Let's see if you can see it. That little band means it was a knit stitch on the previous row. When you purl, it should have that same appearance on your right hand needle. On your right hand needle, it'll have this same appearance. Whereas if it was knit and it's on your left hand hook, if you look here, it has a little V, just like your little loops. You won't see the back of the loop, you'll see the front of the loop. And that is how you know that it is a knit stitch, if it looks like that and it's on your right hand needle. If it looks like this and it's on your left hand needle, that means that it was a purl from the previous row. So knit and purl are the same, they're like opposites of each other. Alright, so to purl, you do not want, when you knit, your yarn is behind your left hook. So to purl, you want to bring that yarn in front of your needle. I'm going to keep calling these hooks, guys. I'm used to crochet. You want to bring the yarn in front of your needle, like so. And then we are going to insert our needle. Instead of going from the bottom up, we are going to go from the top down. So opposite, right? Top, down, and in front. There, and it's kind of hard to see. So it is in the stitch that is on there, okay? And now for this one, I like to use my thumb. I bring my finger up, I use my thumb to then pull this yarn down so that it's staying on my needle. And it's hard to see because my thumb is now blocking. But I bring this down and then I use that to pull this loop through. So there's one purl stitch. After you pull that stitch off, I'm going to go into this next one right here, put it around, use my thumb to hold that down while I pull this loop through. Oops, the yarn split a little. Let me try again. There's another purl stitch. So insert your needle, hold that yarn down, and purl. And guys, since I am not as familiar with knitting, I am sorry if this one is hard to see. I have a hard time looking at the camera and then looking at my hands. Okay, so my phone is ringing. Let's silence that. Okay, this was a fun video. Inserting that needle from the top down towards you, I'm going to wrap my yarn around, use my thumb to fully bring it around and hold it there so I can pull this loop through. And there's another purl stitch. I'm going to just keep purling. For the rest of this row. And this is how you would get a stockinette stitch, where you knit one row and then you purl one row. So it leaves all those little bumps on one side of the fabric, and then the other side of the fabric. Okay. So this is the back side, right? We have all these little bumps, and then this is the right side, which should be looking like your knit fabric. So if I was to knit to continue my stockinette stitch, again, we're going to insert from the front up and towards the back into that stitch, yarn over, pull through, and take that off the needle. Insert from the front towards the back, pointing up, yarn over and pull through, and we are just going to continue this. And inevitably you will become much better at doing the knit stitch than the purl stitch, just because you tend to use the knit stitch more than the purl. So this is how I knit. This is how I hold my yarn in my hand. This is about how fast I knit too. Turn this around. Get this hair out of there. Okay. So, oops, you saw that I stuck my needle in here, but my yarn is behind. I need it to be in front. And I can put my needle in, go around, pull through. So now I'm doing another row of purl. And remember, purling is the opposite of knitting, so you are going to insert it top down and from the back towards you, so your needle should be in front. That's how you do your purl stitch. Again, your yarn is held in front instead of behind your left hand needle, so this is in essence the opposite of the knit stitch. And remember, try to keep your tension loose enough that you're able to stick your needles into each stitch. Otherwise, if you're getting really tight, it gets very hard to push your needle through each loop to pull up the next loop through it. Alright, so here's 4 rows, and us crocheters, we know 4 rows should seem a lot longer than this. 4 rows in knitting is not that long. So there you have it. That is a stockinette stitch. You do 1 row of knit followed by 1 row of purl, and you do that back and forth. This fabric tends to curl, kind of like your single crochet. So you usually do a border on it, where you'll just knit the first 2 stitches and knit the last 2 stitches of every row, and then you do your knit all, and then knit 2, purl to the last 2, purl 2. That way you get a border, and your fabric will stay a lot straighter. So as you can see, it's curling, but you can do a lot of projects with just these basic knit, purl, and a long tail cast on. So hopefully you found that helpful. I would be happy to do some video showing how I correct mistakes if you drop stitches. You just have to not panic. Let me know. I hope that this was helpful. This is probably not my best tutorial. My big hands tend to be in the way of my big little hands seem to be in the way of the camera and the yarn, because I'm not as used to knitting as I am crocheting. But I do love it. I do love this art, and I hope that for those of you who are crocheters who want to knit, definitely try it. It is so much fun. So there is how to do your basic stockinette stitch with both knit and purl, and this was done on my circular needles, which is nice. So if I wanted to travel with it, I can just fold these up, keep this right there in the center, and then take it somewhere with me. How you know which one you start with, you want to move it over to where your tail is. That should be the end closest to the tip of the needle, and then this needle would go into your left hand and you would knit with your right. So there's my video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for commenting and subscribing to my channel. I so appreciate you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I will see you all tomorrow with my yarn review.